Hello, 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 and a massive hello to everybody. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's having a great day wherever you are, whatever you may be doing. This is 50 Pips, rocking and rolling, 17th of June, 2018. Happy Father's Day to everybody. So, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Well, as we go into this week, there should be some interesting action. We'll have to wait and see as always, but basically, if you hadn't had enough of a central bank fix, well, we got the Sintra meeting that's going on, so all the central banks will be out in full force. So watch out for the headlines. The big day for that is probably going to be Wednesday when we have the biggest speeches. Then also on Thursday, we've got the S&B along with the BOE. So officially it's Super Thursday. And then, we've also got OPEC meeting this week where I think everything's going to come out on Friday. So again, we've got an awful lot of potential for event risk with still whatever may come out of Washington and out of China. So what are the most interesting charts going into the week? One chart which I think is particularly interesting is Apple. I mean, we'll have to see how this plays out, but the fact that Apple is kind of stalling a little bit, I think is interesting. Maybe it's time for a breather as we're going in towards the back end of the month. We're going into the summer seasonality. Maybe this is time to see some kind of a breather. So I think here, if Apple, at least early on in the week, it can't get back above, the 190.50 kind of level, this kind of area, and try to challenge that upside, then I think the path of least resistance is to try and, clip all these stops here and try and maybe get some downside traction, potentially all the way back to the 170s. But I think this is particularly interesting, probably most interesting chart in terms of the single stock charts. If you're looking at the indices, I think it just makes sense to focus on the NASDAQ, even though we've had the little bit of a heavy tone on the YM. But still, whether you're looking for big momentum to the upside or the downside is likely not going to happen unless NASDAQ decides to play. So looking at the NASDAQ here, what I would focus on early on in the week, very similar to Apple. If we can hold above the highs, then upside grind higher, any new high possible. If we can't hold that, then some kind of a retracement to the downside. The difference here on Apple is that it's holding heavier than the NASDAQ. I think if we start to get some kind of traction below Thursday, Wednesday, last week's lows, then I think the move into the 7,000s could be fairly quick. I don't think any long will really start to even flinch unless we trade below the 6,800. But clearly, if anything, this is the right time of the month. This is the right time of the year to look for a little bit of weakness to come in. So we'll have to see what happens there. Now, the most interesting thing, the key mover also as we go into central bank week, etc., is the DXY. And you can see this across all the currency indices. Now, I think here you have a situation where last week the bears got a little bit excited on this move down. And this week, the bulls got a little bit excited on this move up. Now, as far as we're concerned, we're going to try and be as neutral or as calm about this as possible and maintain what we've been discussing. As long as we're stuck inside this range, it's much to do about nothing. It's still a range play. Now, clearly, this is an extremely welcome development if you're a bull, and there's a strong possibility of an aggressive move to the upside and continuation. Usually you have to be a little bit careful because the market likes to fool a majority of the people most of the time. But right here, we'd be going into the week saying really not a lot has happened, right? We have to get a sustained move outside of this range. Strong move upside, then this could really start to rip. We could get a very big squeeze. We don't consider this anything of a squeeze. The squeeze really has to come if we start to trade back above that zone. And if the sellers come in and we take this out, then we'd be back in the 91.50s before anybody could blink. We wouldn't be surprised. And that would be fairly neutral for us on the year and inside this range. So much to do about nothing, but you have to be careful because if we squeeze, then we could really get some traction. And this is, this is highlighted across any of the majors, right? If you look back at Euro, what's happening on Euro, this is exactly, remember what we talked about. When it was trading here, we said the only thing you could do is try and trade long, right? But essentially what's happened, we got a nice little pop, and now we're right back to the scene of the crime. So of course, is this level under pressure? Sure, the same way as the upside is under pressure on the DXY, but for now, nothing much has happened. If you look at something like the Aussie, let's get on the Aussie. Very heavy. Does it want to clip stops? It surely looks like it. Could it get a lot of downside traction? It sure looks like it, but nothing has happened yet, right? That's the key thing. Here, especially if we break below the 74 and any attempt to rally, you see sellers coming in, then that's probably a sign that across the board, the dollar is holding very, very strong, and we would not be surprised to see 400 to the downside come fairly quickly to take out these lows. But right here, it's far from a done deal. You can look at it on Swissy or on yen too, right? We've been talking about these for a long time, and you see what's happening on Swissy. Well, there you go. We had that ramp after the puke, but really we're back to the scene of the crime. So USDJPY, we had the puke, then we had a little bit of a ramp, and we're back to the scene of the crime. So normally we'd probably be a lot more gung-ho on the recent moves if we weren't going into this central bank week, you know, with the Sintra meetings. So I'd still be a little bit cautious, and as usual, our preference is to let the charts guide. And right now, the charts are still inside those ranges, right? Look at it on, you can look at this on the week. Go back 1, 2, 3, 4. We're still inside range we put in 4 weeks ago. You know, that's a very, very telling sign. That's a very, very telling sign, is the market still hasn't had enough information to break out, right? Enough information to digest the next move. Is it trying? Sure. But for now, still not enough information or substantial enough to justify the move. Now, and again, another example of that is silver. Does it looks like it got whacked? Sure. Has it broken all of this support? No. And again, the big question is, if you look at that move with that delayed reaction on silver and gold, as far as we're concerned, you know, it's a lot of wheeling and dealing unless we get a strong break. You know, we would not be surprised in the slightest if these moves continue or if they reversed on a dime, right? It's just very, very suspicious the way the market's moving, especially on the metals. You just have to be very, very cautious about reading too much into it. More importantly, this week, again, a lot of questions coming into the blog on what's going on crude. Well, again, we have to wait and see what's going to come out of that meeting. And in similar fashion, not an awful lot has changed. Our base case was that, you know, we're going to stay stuck inside this range, that we'd have to get very, very bullish if we start to get day closes above the 70 mark, and we'd have to get very, very bearish structurally from a longer term perspective as we got daily or weekly closes below the 62.60. But our base case is that don't get confused about velocity of move inside this range. It doesn't mean anything in terms of the bigger picture. Again, it doesn't mean you can't make money or lose money trading this, but it means that in terms of the bigger picture, we need outside this range. And our base case was that this range was going to be protected until we got through this next big OPEC meeting. So we'll have to see what happens. Again, wouldn't read too much into it. A lot of wheeling and dealing. I think we just have to wait for this this week and see how it ends. And don't forget, you know, as we're going towards the end of the month, you know, maybe buyback blackout period. We'll have to see what happens. We're starting to get into that June seasonality, which is a little bit weaker for the equities. So we might get something started. I just think this week, as controversial as this opinion may be, but I think as much as a lot of people were willing to read an awful lot into what happened this week, our base case is that there's been an attempt to do something, but nothing conclusive, and can't read too much into it because we're still stuck in those broader ranges. Okay, wishing everybody an awesome week as usual. Thank you for liking, thank you for sharing. Hope everybody has a great one again. Happy Father's Day to everybody. Have an awesome one. Take care. Bye bye.